race. Paul Swangard joined by 2000 individual NCAA cross-country champion Kara Goucher, sporting her Colorado colors. You can't see those there, but she's based in Boulder. Of course, won that championship at the University of Colorado. She was prime time before there was prime time in football. And Kara, excited to have you back here calling some cross-country this October Friday.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks for having me. I love cross country, and I love cross country when it's like this, when it's tough. You find out a lot about athletes in environments like this, so I'm excited to be here with you today.
Well, let's talk about this as it relates to the road to the NCAAs. The end of the road will be in Earlysville, Virginia for the NCAA National Championships on November the 18th. And this race, along with tomorrow's pre-nats, which will also be held in Virginia, it's a pretty tight schedule. And this race for a lot of these teams, a lot of them ranked, but they're trying to get a feel for which team they're going to put out there for those conference, regional, and then ultimately the championship run.
Absolutely. There's a lot going on, right? Coaches are trying to figure out which athletes are healthy, which athletes are coming up. There's not that much time between now and the NCAA championship. So all of these meets really matter. They give the coaches data points. They give the athletes data points against their competitors. So this race, it's very important.
And very important in the context of just kind of seeing where you're at vis-a-vis the other talent on the course today. 23 of the top 30 teams ranked in the latest coaches poll are here. You see the top individual finishers from last year's NCAAs are all here, featuring by many stretches one of the greatest runners you'll have seen in the collegiate ranks, Katelyn Tuohy of North Carolina State. But she's got a host of people behind her, Kara, and again, a lot of folks, as you look at those top-ranked schools, as North Carolina State trying to win back-to-back-to-back championships at the end of this run. But NAU, Notre Dame, Stanford, Washington, they're all here to test them.
Absolutely. Everyone wants to beat NC State. Obviously, NC State wants to remain on top. So today's an important day, right? It's not the NCAA championships, but it is a loaded field. They get to really be pushed probably for the first time all season. And it's just, it's like my coach, Mark Wetmore, used to say, it's a fact-finding mission. We're going out there, we're going to run hard, and we're going to come back with information.
So you see some of the notables that we expect to be in the field today. Katelyn Tuohy and Kelsey Camille, the 1-2 punch for NC State. But you got Stearns out of NAU. Parker Valby we're seeing for the very first time for the University of Florida in conditions that are not anything near what you would expect in her training down in the southern part of the U.S., but getting a good test here. This will be the site of the NCAA championships next year. They're all in their boxes, ready to run the cross-section of schools. You see Stanford going to figure prominently, obviously, in this women's race as well on the men's side. But as we go through all of these boxes, Kara, I mean, let's take the step back for those who are just kind of tuning in and watching this just for the sake of, maybe a fan of kind of just running in general. Cross-country, the true team sport we offer in running between indoor, outdoors, and cross-country.
I really love cross-country because of the team aspect. And once you get to track and field, there's multiple people in a bunch of different events. People are peaking for different things. Cross-country, you're all out there together, and you matter, right? You matter. You're scoring for your team. I love this aspect. I love cross country. I think it's just a very pure form of the sport. Nobody cares about watches. Nobody cares about times. It's about who can get across that line first and what team can put 5 people in as quickly as possible. I just love it. Such a great part of our sport.
So the 12th ranked Cal Baptist squad there on the end, getting their opportunity to compete for a spot in the national championships as they had moved up from Division II just a couple of years ago, had to sit 1 year out, but they are among the top teams here as the Gator makes its final sweep here, and the positioning here. And one of the great aspects of cross-country as well is the opening salvo of a gun at about 700 meters of chaos as they'll get themselves out on this Thomas Zimmer race course, really designed for the sport. It's adjacent to a golf course, but it is a standalone setup for cross-country, and the best in the country are here to race the 6,000-meter distance here. And a little bit of a change in schedule. The championship races will begin here to start the day, and we are underway at the 2023 Nuttycombe, Wisconsin Cross Country Invitational with the Women's Championship 6,000 meters.
I love this, Paul. Look at the start. You don't get this anywhere else. These wide sweeping start lines. We see all of these women hustling out, trying to sort of get their position, figure out where they're going to go as the course narrows. But you don't see anything like this in any other sport. I just love the start line of a great cross-country meet.
Well, we spent a lot of time last year during this broadcast trying to get ourselves re-educated on the tiebreaker rules, because this race came down to a tiebreaker where NC State won on the tiebreaker against New Mexico. As we get in the race, we'll start to work our way through some of the lineups here. Now, one of the things that makes this unique and let's be honest, a little bit frustrating for the preparation from the broadcast point of view is there are these B races and these A races. Most of the teams have brought large squads, and typically the coaches are afforded the opportunity to make last-minute decisions. So sometimes we don't know who the A team is going to be until after that B race is run. Here now we've got a chance to see some of these squads. You see Colorado there, as Kara knows that squad very well, trying to get themselves up into championship form here. But as we work our way through the rest of these squads, so much talent across, and with the transfer portal and with the changes coming to, the changes in conference alignment, a lot of strong schools, and you kind of have to relearn these teams each year because there's been a lot of personnel shifting between squads.
Oh, a lot of shifting, people switching schools, going to graduate school at a different school. But Paul, look at this. This is the first time we've seen Parker Valby all year, and we see her going straight to the front to lead this right now. We see Katelyn Tuohy to her right. So the favorites are already going straight to the front and making a race out of this. It's windy out there today, extremely windy. It's raining. I would kind of have expected that we'd see these women sit and let other people do the work and get pulled a little bit before they had to go out into the wind, but they're going for it early on.
Almost 1,000 runners across the 4 different races today, but Parker Valby, the junior from Florida, the 22 NCAA runner-up to Tuohy there, front and center. Again, has not raced this season, so fresh legs, as it were, here in early October, and setting the early pace, and Katelyn Tuohy setting herself up there behind. And an opportunity to just sort of talk about, Katelyn Tuohy and her decision-making that's going to be coming up here in the course of the next several months, back here for in essence, probably one final season of cross-country, and then the decision to make going into an Olympic year whether she'll turn professional, but felt like she, and has said publicly, wanted to come back and run with her teammates this fall.
I think it's really admirable. They've built something really special at NC State, and she really wants to experience that one last time with her teammates. She's such a talent. She has the ability to go pro if she wants, but she really wants to represent her school one more time and help them fight for that team title one more time.
Down the lower left of your screen, the athletic course tracker that affords you the opportunity to see where they are out on the courses. They've gone through that first kilometer mark, and that trio up front has broken away from the rest of the field, which is perfectly happy to settle in for the early pacing here. Valby and Tuohy there, 1 and 2.
This is not an easy course. This course has hills, it's rolling, it is true cross country. And so to see this separation so early on just really speaks to the talent that we're seeing right now. These women are exceptionally talented. They've had their own personal battles with each other. And, they're starting their cross country seasons just going for it right away. We expect to see this again, of course, at the NCAA championship, another rematch. But this is a good experience for both of them to race each other, to get a feel for each other, who's feeling better with the kick, who's feeling more like leading. Right now we see that Valby has decided she's going to be the one that's going to set the tone for this.
And the third member of that trio is the freshman from Stanford, Amy Bunnage, the Australian 3,000-meter record holder for the under-20 division in Australia. Had a nice performance in Virginia in her debut with the Virginia Invite, finishing in 6th position. So mixing it up here with the junior Valby and as well Katelyn Tuohy, the reigning champion both in the NCAAs and in this race here. She won a year ago in Madison.
We really
Several
get
spots
the
along the course
right
where we'll get a chance to not only see the times and the splits come through, but the graphics will afford us the complexity of the scoring behind them, and as we talked about, tiebreaker last year to decide the women's team title, but again, it's not necessarily where your number one runner is. It's down to those 3, 4, and 5 runners as you try to pick up points, and so much happens over the course of those final few kilometers as teams try to work themselves back into position to move up in the overall standings. You look at the Northern Arizona squad figuring prominently in the team race today as well. Notre Dame with Markovic coming off that NCAA championship in the 3,000-meter steeplechase, also among our favorites today. She was 8th at last year's NCAA championship and 11th in 2021. Getting over one of many hills here. Carrie, you ran on, I'm sure, on a variety of different cross-country setups. These sort of championship courses, how are they different?
They're made for cross-country. They're usually not flat and fast. They usually have that beautiful start line that we saw, so long and wide. They have turns. Their challenges are built in. I was able to run at the course at Iowa State for my senior year when I won my title, which was a very difficult course, similar with a big start line and then lots of hills and turns. I think it makes it so great. And Paul, I just wanted to point out, we see that group behind them. And as you were talking about the team, everybody matters on the team, right? Even if you're the 6th runner, if you can get ahead of someone else's score, it matters. So we see that giant pack, but there's a ton of storylines and a ton of racing going on in that pack that will matter for the team competition.
And these wonderful graphics that now will display on the screen will help tell that story behind the leaders of Valby, Tuohy, and Bunnage as the top 5 runners from each of the squads, most squads having 7 runners in the field, can score 5. And Northern Arizona, this is dynamic, though, because they have to immediately sort of pull out runners and based on where everybody is, add those points back together. So Northern Arizona, Notre Dame, NC State currently 1, 2, and 3, with the Huskies of Washington, soon to be a member of the Big Ten Conference there, back in 4th. And you can see the individual leaders with Valby, Tuohy, and Bunnage. And then Kaylee Mitchell, who had a strong performance to open up her season at the Bill Bowerman Invitational at the University of Oregon. Coverage you saw here on Runner Space back there in 4th. But Kara, 12 and a half seconds, the delta there between that top 3 group and the chase pack.
And it's just truly incredible because these aren't slouchers in that chase pack. I just think it really shows you the talent level straight up front. But now we see these women packed in tight, and a lot of them are working together as a team, working their way through the field. But as they're 2.5K in now, if they have that strategy of moving up later in the race, this is a time where you have to sort of wake up and start moving through the crowds because every spot matters for your team.
Northern Arizona comes in ranked 2nd in the country, right behind NC State and Katelyn Tuohy, as they now are a 2-woman lead pack. Bunnage has fallen off just a spell, and what has started to fall with some purpose is that rain, Kara. I looked at the weather map as we got up this morning, and it is going to be relentless all day. This is a true test of cross country.
Absolutely. Paul, the rain is one element that can be frustrating. It blinds your vision. You're constantly blinking, but then they add in the wind. I mean, this is a real cross-country day. This is a good practice run. You learn so much about yourself in these conditions. You learn a lot about your athletes as a coach. Who's able to block that out and still just execute the plan, not worrying about what's happening around them, acknowledging, okay, yeah, it is windy and it is wet, but it is for everybody. And who does it affect more? It helps you learn a lot about your athletes. But we have a battle here up front, absolutely. Valby is not holding back, and Tuohy is just staying with her. She just tossed off her gloves. We have a race on our hands.
Well, and the 6,000-meter distance doesn't afford a lot of opportunity to kind of settle into a pace here. This is going to be racing from the gun, isn't it?
Absolutely. This, 6K, yeah, it's 1K further than 5K, which we've seen some of the teams run this year, but it's still a short race. These women aren't out there for that long. At the NCAAs, we see the men run a 10K, and it does change the dynamic of the race. It does change when you need to make your moves, but 6K is short, and these women are going to run hard. And Valby is trying to put some distance on Tuohy right now and try to put it away here at the halfway point.
There's Kaylee Mitchell of Oregon State now, who's broken away from that group. As you start to look at bibs, you see Camille of NC State alongside Leah Stevens, so a pair from NC State up there at the front. And you looked at their spread, actually, NC State with Tuohy, Camille, and Stevens were 212 and 13 at the 2K mark, but then their fourth and fifth runners, 48th and 120th. But those women probably in that large group here, which is, again, that team dynamic where those placings for 4 and 5 may be bolstered by some late fast running by NC State here in the final few kilometers. We get a look at all the field coming through now, all suffering through these conditions in Madison, Wisconsin today, as the leaders are just about 3.5 kilometers in, so over halfway through the 6-kilometer championship distance.
And with those team scores we're getting, you never know what can happen, right? Like sometimes you have a team that's made up of mostly middle distance folks, so they're out quick and maybe they fade in the second half. Sometimes you have a team that's made up of more 5K, 10K athletes. So a lot can change, but it's a good indicator to us of where people are positioned and how they're running early on. But Parker Valby really, really wants to put this away. We just saw Katelyn Tuohy take a little look over her shoulder to see if there's anyone behind her, but there isn't. These two women are quite a bit ahead.
Yeah, you can see Bunnage and Mitchell, I believe, back in the distance there. And the distance between Valby and Tuohy now ever growing slightly, as you can get a good sense, too, of the wind here. They're coming at them at the side now at 3.7 kilometers that they're out on the course. They're going to kind of work their way now into the closing stages of this race, and Tuohy just trying to stay within contact. She's always got a strong close, but Valby now looking very confident here in front.
We saw this at NCAAs where it looked like Valby had put it away and Tuohy was able to reel her in, but Valby looks very controlled right now. I mean, her form is just as good as it was at the beginning. She looks like she's just bouncing off that ground, like the wind isn't affecting her at all. So I think that there's a challenge here for Tuohy to be able to close that gap. Valby's done a really good job of really opening it up with only 2K to go.
Coming up on the 4K split, which will be our final split before they reach the finish line as they make the climb here on one of the portions of elevation on this fabulous Zimmer Championship course in Madison, Wisconsin. The straight-on shot from the Gator giving you a sense of also the ability for the crowd to get out and around this course. You talk about a lot of running happening within the confines of the competition, the running by the spectators alone to get around on this course. And again, this course set up for a very spectator-friendly experience, but you got to bring your running shoes to be a good spectator today.
Oh yeah, you got to be ready. But that's one of the cool things about cross country is you do see the fans, you do see the coaches running back and forth, really cheering everybody on and taking it all in. We see that Valby has a 7.5 second lead here. I don't know, Paul, that might be too much for Tuohy to make up at this point. She does still look good and strong in the back, but we just see Valby popping off that ground, and we know that ground is wet and getting muddier with every second, so she looks very much so in control, and she is very much so showing in her first race of the year that she means business.
Start to see the teams populate as they come through that 4K split as well. NAU is looking very good right now, with Elise Stearns back there in 6th position, then Annika Reese, Alejandra Upshaw, and Gracelyn Larkin together as a trio in 13, 14, and 15. And then their number 5 runner back in 26th position, Ruby Smee, the junior. So they are very strong in first. NC State has now moved up, so we talked about it's not necessarily those top 3 runners with Stevens, Tuohy, and Camille. It's down to their 4th and 5th runners, but their 4th runner, Grace Hartman, has made a strong move up into the top 20. She's now up into 17th, and we'll have to keep an eye back in 83rd position. That's Hannah Gapes, who's actually in 84th, and see whether she can move up here in the final stretch of the race. But now in splendid isolation is Parker Valby of Florida, making her 2023 cross-country debut and making a statement here against Katelyn Tuohy with about a kilometer and a quarter to go.
She looks so great, Paul. I have to say, she finally looks like she's working, which, makes sense. She's been out there for almost 5 kilometers. We finally can see it a little bit on the face. She's really pumping and working, but what an effort from her. And you can see from these camera angles, this course is no joke. See these hills that they're climbing up. It's unrelenting, and they're pushed the whole way through. But she has done a great job of separating and just pushing that distance out more and more. And every time she gets over a hill like this and she's able to extend that lead, it's tougher when Tuohy comes up over, when she sees that lead growing. So Parker Valby's just showing a lot of really good strategy right now and showing that, she wants that title.
Notre Dame, that came into this weekend ranked number 4 in the country, currently in 3rd here. It is worth noting a couple of squads, almost everybody in the top 30 is here. Those notables who are not include Oklahoma State, currently ranked 3rd in the country. BYU sitting this race out in 6th ranking overall, and Virginia hosting those pre-nats, currently ranked 7th in the country. As Tuohy exits view, Valby back to the front, less than a kilometer to go, as you see that course tracker working now parallel to that starting chute, and then a one big swoop left as they'll take a very long but gentle right-hand turn and then work their way back into the finish chute and get to the finish. But right now, Kara, Valby in control.
Absolutely. I can see that she's working harder than she was earlier. She's really using those arms. You can see it on her face a little bit, but she hasn't slowed down a lick. So she's run this race absolutely perfectly, pressing throughout, maintaining this killer tempo that she put out there. You can see those flags in the wind. This is a tough, tough day, and this is going to be really good for her and a huge confidence boost that she could come out here in her first cross-country race of the season, put on a display like this when all of the elements were working against her. This is going to be huge for her as she continues forward in the season.
See the splits between 2K and 4K for our top 2 runners in Valby and Tuohy. But after that 2K split, that was the point at which Valby just sort of decided, I'm going to put some distance between me, and kind of broke away and has not afforded the defending champion here, Tuohy, to have any sort of contact remaining with the leader as they again now begin to make that gentle rise here, moving into the final stretch of this race, as she'll be able to turn and then see the finish line shoot in the distance.
Paul, she hasn't even looked back. She is so focused and so dialed in. She's not even worried about what's happening behind her. She's out here on a mission and she's executing it absolutely perfectly. Like I would expect at this point, she'd just glance over and just see. She hasn't done that. She is just hammering all the way through, and she is almost done. And what an effort we've seen out of her. This is dominance.
Well, if you're going to wait to open your season until it is one of the most opportune times to make a statement with your opening race of the season, no better way to do it than to win a Nuttycombe Individual Championship. Parker Valby, the junior from Florida, opening her season here, beating the defending champion, the defending NCAA champion. Valby, runner-up a year ago in the NCAA championship, now having dreams of changing that result in Virginia in a little more than a month's time, and a confidence booster here as she will open the season winning here at Nuttycombe.
She still hasn't looked back yet. I mean, what a race. She was here for business, and she executed a strong race out of Katelyn Tuohy, getting back into it herself after a long, long track season. But I'm just really impressed with both of these women. But Parker Valby was just on a mission. She finished. She didn't even turn around to see what was happening. She was like, got my job done, and now she's going to stand there as we talk about that team aspect. She's going to try to stay here and wait for her teammates and see what they can do.
Yeah, Kelsey Camille comes back and finishes in third. Lee Stearns of Northern Arizona. Kaylee Mitchell of Oregon State. Scrimgeour of Georgetown. Ramsden of Harvard among the top 7. Gracelyn Larkin of NAU and Markosic of Notre Dame. That looks like the top 9. Annika Reese of NAU in 10th. And then here comes the C, as we'll wait for the top 5 to get across the line. NAU has already got their top 5 across the line now, as they have 4th, 8th, 10th, 12th, and 18th for 52 points, waiting for NC State's 5th runner. As they still, as you see, have 4 scored. You can see Northern Arizona's 52 points there. What a fabulous spread for them, 22.3, as they seem well on their way to taking the individual title here at the team title rather, at Nuttycombe. NC State with 95. Georgetown unofficially now in 3rd position. These scores pretty dynamic and fluid as they continue to work their way to the finish line, and kudos to the timing squads there at the finish line to work out all the details here in real time.
And look, Paul, and Northern Arizona, when we saw the last marker, it looked like they had a couple women who were moving backwards, and it looked like there was an opening for NC State to kind of swoop in there and get that. But now we see under NAU all green. Everybody moved up in those final 2 kilometers, and there was a couple women from NC State that fell back a little bit, and that's why we see that dominance by Northern Arizona. They were already in the lead, and then they continued to push through in those last 2 kilometers, and that is an incredibly dominant team performance. They've got to be feeling good about that.
And for Georgetown, that came in ranked 11th in the country, that is a strong performance by the Hoyas. Should that score finally hold, Stanford and Oregon State, now Notre Dame and Florida among the top 7 here. Again, these scores being updated in real time as the rest of the field gets across the line, but safe to say that Northern Arizona setting up an interesting potential race at history coming up shortly in the men's race. No teams have ever swept Nuttycombe, and Northern Arizona's men's squad arguably coming in with even a stronger favorite moniker than the NAU women had on this rainy day in Madison today. Strong performance all around. Parker Valby makes quick work of 6K, 19:17.2, as her final 2 kilometers, I believe, was the fastest of her 3. She ran 6:16.7 for that final 2K, 6:35 for the second 2K after opening in 6:25, so she saves the best for last, Kara.
I mean, she just looked so great. Obviously, we didn't know what we were going to see. She hasn't raced yet this cross-country season. And with the weather conditions, I was worried that they were out a little quick for the wind and the rain, but she knows her body. She knows what she's ready to do. And if you ever could make a statement, she made it. You know, she has another month to sharpen up to get even better. And she's saying, hey, I've put in the work. I'm ready to be here, and I don't want to be second this year. I want to win. And she certainly seems to be doing everything right to make that happen.
Final runners getting to the finish line as you see the pending official results. But in the meantime, let's head to the finish line to hear from our winner, who's with Mike J.